Dudes, yeah, what's happening, man? It's Trent, and yeah, hey, I get a lot of questions. A lot of times they're from college students, and their professors ask them, hey, could you reach out to a pro who does the thing that you want to do? And ask them a bunch of questions about what their day is like and what the challenges of the job is. Well, for many years I was a comic book artist, so I thought that I would do one for that as well. If you want to hear about my life as a YouTube artist, I have another video for the days that I'm a YouTube artist. If you want to know about being a concept artist, I have another video about being a concept artist. But this one is different. This one is about being a comic book artist. Now, for those of you who don't know, I got my start doing comic books when I was in high school. With an indie comic book called Creed, and I'm bringing that back. By the way, you can pick that up on Indiegogo in January. You'll be able to back it, and I'm really nervous about that. So I'm going to appreciate your support on that. Returning to comic books. Wow, I'm essentially a pro comic book artist again. So I thought I'd do another one of these videos for those who want to know what it's like to be a comic book artist. So this is for those students who have those same questions. I get them so many times that I thought I'd just answer this for everybody out there. So if you're a student and you're like, hey, my art teacher said to reach out to a pro about how to be a comic book artist, this is going to cover you, man. So question number one, describe the day-to-day tasks, functions, and or responsibilities of your profession. Okay, so the day-to-day is essentially, the most important thing is you got to deliver a great book. And I'm not talking about working for Marvel. I did that for many years. I'm not talking about doing a comic where you're just a part of the rest of the team. I'm talking about owning your own comic, making your own book. So you've got to always be on the lookout for what your competition is doing. You've got to look at trends that are happening. For instance, the comic book industry is changing really dramatically right now. Everything's going graphic novels. It's all going crowdfunded. And there's a lot of the big players are shutting down. And this leaves a really big window for new blood to step in and find new business models for how to release this awesome form of entertainment. And so a lot of, your day is spent thinking about that, thinking about your customers, thinking about how they're going to receive what it is that you're making, what's going to get them hyped, what kind of story arcs you're going to want to do, planning ahead for the next book, thinking about the script. And so I have several Scrivener documents that I keep track of many notes of the many adventures of the characters that I'm creating. I'm always looking at the team that I'm putting together. Do I need a new inker? Do I need somebody to help out with colors? Do I need an editor or a letterer? There's all those things as well. So a big part of your day is really just thinking about how you're going to deliver the absolute best product that you can do. When you start out your day, now the thing is, as a comic book artist, you don't work in an office, you're really self-employed. So that means it requires a great deal of personal responsibility. That means you have to be able to track out all of your tasks. That means organizing everything from, where you're at in the script to how finalized and polished your dialogue is to what you're going to be working on in 2 weeks, especially with graphic novels where, this is not a bite-sized thing. Graphic novels have to be a minimum of 60 pages, just to make it worth the customer's time to buy it. It's a hard sell to do a shorter book because people expect almost a full story. They expect a fully immersive experience. I like to think of every graphic novel like a movie. And so I'm storyboarding everything out and I'm trying to figure out what are the most awesome hype scenes. Right now, I'm in the stage of evaluating whether or not I can add any more cool action scenes to really create some beautiful imagery. And you're always thinking about that. You're always sketching out ideas for moments from this idea of a story that you want to do and deciding, does that look awesome? Is that exciting for the viewer? And then you're trying to figure out, how do I work that into the schedule while simultaneously handling an awful lot of social media? Because if you're doing your own comic book, you're in charge of your own promotions as well. And I was just talking to my friend Ethan about this, the creator of Cyberfrog, and he was telling me, stop editing. So you're going to get a lot more videos of me just kind of going off the cuff like this. They might be longer, a little bit more rambly, but hey, I can't sit and spend 6 or 8 hours editing like I've been doing. I have to put out a lot more videos, and that's a big part of your day. As a comic book creator, your social media presence is a big part of your story. Your story is your readers' attachment to you, and it's why they would care what it is that you're making. So you have to be a person to them. You have to be a person to the people who are reading your stories and engage with people. So I'm on my Discord all the time. I'm constantly uploading sketches of my current pages and artwork that I'm doing over on Twitter and like on my other various social media websites, because I want to keep everybody in the loop on what's going on, what's coming up. Like as soon as people get a chance to forget about you, they will. So you really have to keep reminding them that you're around and that you're doing great stuff that they're interested in. And especially if your story is very relatable. So social media becomes, probably half of your workday. You're lucky if you really get to sit down and draw for 3 or 4 hours a day. But the cool part about it is that, you're making your own hours. So yeah, there's many a nights when I'm up until 3 a.m., still working on my comic book, and you'll catch me on my Discord popping in now and then just to say, hey, what do you guys think of this panel, or things like that? Getting people involved in what you're doing. That's the majority of your day. So next question, what are some of the projects that you're currently working on? Right now, I just finished The Secrets of Kung Fulio, which is an illustrated novel, which is basically 70 drawings in black and white. And it tells the story of a monk who goes to this monastery, and he's basically dealing with a bully, and he has to decide whether or not to follow the ways of the passive masters or whether or not to fight back. And once he decides, he's going to have to find a cheap trick because he stinks at Kung Fu. But him and his buddy band together, and they get themselves caught up in some cool mystical fantasy Kung Fu action. So that just came out. You can pick that up in hardcover or paperback over on Amazon. I also have signed editions over on my eBay store as well. So we just finished, that's Secrets of Kung Fulio. It's Twilight Monk is the name of the book. And I'll put a link to that in the description below. But I'm currently working on, as you're watching in this video, I'm working on the return of Creed. The Creed was a comic book that I started when I was 17 years old. And Creed himself is a 17-year-old comic book creator. But the difference is he's chronicling in his comic book, he's chronicling his adventures into a dream world where him and his morphing dream frog / dragon, they stomp on nightmares and overall try to face his personal fears and his own personal challenges and disorders. And so that's, as I said, I'm planning out, like I have to learn about how to do a Indiegogo campaign. So like that's been my big challenge, is learning how to market a indie comic, an indie graphic novel. Very exciting, but getting back to owning my own thing again, super exciting, especially after coming off of working on huge, big AAA video games for so many years. Okay, question number 3, describe some of the pros and cons of being a professional in your field. So as a comic book artist, you get to own everything that you're creating. If you're the creator of that comic book, that means that you're doing licensing deals. If your comic becomes popular, and Creed was very popular, I had licensing deals. So I would work out deals where somebody else would make the toys, and I would just do the designs and then approve them. And then we had trading cards and we had film licensing deals, and it was really exciting to like get that engagement with the audience. Mostly, that's the real joy, is getting letters from people. I still have all of the handwritten letters, and they're almost 30 years old now. Oh, we got a hot rodder cruising by here. I don't know if you heard that. Anyway, that engagement of really connecting with an audience, if I could express this genuine part of myself that others would feel a connection with me, it made me feel a little bit more connected to people. And that's the reason to create. Working in video games sometimes can feel a little bit detached. It's like, I designed another tower, and it's like the most played, video game location in history, and I designed that, but nobody even knows or cares that I was involved in it at all. There's nothing personal there. There's no relationship there. They don't know or care who created that or who designed it or what the meaning behind it was. Whereas with doing your own indie comic, you absolutely, everybody who reads it knows it's like they're talking to you. It's like a personal connection with the creator. So like that's the really awesome part about it. The cons of making comic books for a living, it is a lot of work, a lot more work than you might realize. And oftentimes it's really difficult to make ends meet. You have to do a lot of conventions. If you're not a huge seller, if your books are not a huge seller, and I've gone through many ruts. One of the reasons why I switched over to working in video games was that the comic book industry collapsed several times over. And it's sort of like gasping for air. And even if you had a really popular comic, it was really tough to make ends meet. And you also deal with a lot of shady people. I had to deal with so many just practically insane people. The abuse that goes on in the comic book world, if you're not self-publishing, it can be really demoralizing and demotivating. I had very few really amazing experiences, and there were a couple of people that were, they gave me great opportunities, but there was, other people who they would have used every year of my life and given me pennies while they made piles of money off of my work and my own creation, no less. And so it's really easy to become bitter working in comic books. And so that's why I say it's best if you can just own your own thing. And so it's a lot more work, but man, there's some really tough, it's a tough business to make ends meet in, man. You got to be really business savvy, which I never was as a young man. So if I could give my younger self some advice making comics, I'd say, never work with a publisher, man. Just do all that stuff yourself. Own everything that you do. Never cut anybody in unless they're giving you the best deal that you can get. And just learn how to market and hype up people about what it is that you're making. Next question, number 4. What were some of your early roles in the field? Well, my very first comic that I ever did was, my first published thing was a comic strip in the school newspaper in my middle school. And it was called Frenzy. And it was about this kid who was just disturbed. He just he'd make bad jokes about his dog dying, and then he'd burp in people's faces. It's kind of like a Bart Simpson type of a character. Anyway, that led into working in comic books in high school, like I said, with my buddy Matt Martin and Ethan Van Sciver. Both of those guys, we got our start together in comics. And so I was making, my first book was called Deadbolt, and it was kind of a Spawn ripoff, Spider-Man / Spawn ripoff. And then after that, I created Creed, which was a little bit more of a personal story about a kid who goes into a dream world. I only later, now, with Creed Reimaginary, you're going to read about how he starts to make his own comics, because I thought that was such a key aspect of my life as a 17-year-old pro comic book artist. Why not make that part of the character's life as well? And he has his, best pal as a frog. Weird connection, who turns into a dragon. Yeah. In an interview last year, I told people, if you can't do the correct thing, then do the honest thing. And that's been the nature of my entire career. Creed was autobiographical. It was an amplification. Everything's a caricature, but it's a caricature of my life and what I had been going through. So the next Creed books will chronicle the experience of being a successful 17-year-old comic book creator. He'll just have the added aspect of being able to go into the dream world to face all of the challenges with his ego and face all the challenges with acceptance and all the things that I was going through. Really tough stuff to go through as a 17-year-old. All right, next question, number 5. What would you say is the biggest turnoff for people who are trying to follow this line of work? The biggest turnoff is going to be, for doing comic books, is probably going to be that there's no comic book industry the way that it used to be. It's totally changed now. You have to learn a lot of things. You're going to have to learn how to you're going to have to learn how to do Indiegogo or crowdfunding. You're going to have to learn how to do build a social media presence. That can be very intimidating because it takes a lot of momentum. You're going to have to learn to enjoy the process of just creating and be detached from a lot of the negative energies of the world and focus on just making an awesome escape for people to run off to, even while you yourself have to deal with so much of the business stuff. The business stuff is not the fun part. So I think that's the biggest turnoff for a lot of people. I've been finding that a lot of artists have a problem asking for money for their artwork or for their comics. So a lot of artists will go, I'll do a free webcomic. And then that webcomic runs for 2 years. It's a lot of work and they never made a dime from it. And they're just bitter about it. So that can be a real turnoff for people. And I suggest never give away what you're making for free. I think that you should charge a reasonable price for what you're making, and then make sure that it is of the high enough quality that people will pay for it. Now, that's not to say you can't give them samples or anything, but I'm getting off on a tangent. Let's just say that the business side can be really tough to balance with the escapism side. That's probably the biggest turnoff. And making a business out of your art. A lot of people, they're like artistes, and they never want to deal with the money stuff. But they wouldn't have a problem getting a job for an employer. So why not just learn the business side? All right, question number 6. Would you say that this career path lets you balance your work and your social life? With drawing comics, yeah, I would say so. But, again, it's kind of like you have to have so many different streams of revenue. It's like you're always working on, new t-shirt designs or sticker designs or postcards, or you're handling, your social media stuff. So in that way, I mean, the fact that you don't have a commute, yeah, certainly you free up more time. I work from home, so like, hey, I'm spending a lot of time with my wife. I make my own hours, so if a friend wants to get together for lunch, I can make the time and then just bump back my drawing time till later in the day. So I would say if it's something where you're doing it primarily as your main gig, as long as you've got other supplements of income and you're managing it well or managing it efficiently and you have a team, yeah, absolutely. It's totally manageable to balance your work life. But again, it's your own employer. So if you don't have a healthy work-life balance, then you need to find a way to work less. And I've been getting better at delegating. So for instance, like my next book, I'm going to be bringing in a colorist to help out with color flats. That's going to save me loads of time. I'm going to be bringing in a letterer, saving loads of time. It costs me money from the profits, but the important thing is that I'm working on the story and the core artwork for the project, for the book, and making sure that it delivers a final product that's really exciting. And so as long as that's satisfied, then sure, you can have a pretty good work-life balance. But there are a lot of comic book artists out there and comic book creators who do struggle because it's never enough, right? And so you always kind of have to learn to know when you're running your own business, you're always trying to balance out like, how much is enough? Like, do I need to be more successful? Do I need to make more sales? Or is this fine? And am I giving my attention to the proper thing? If I'm giving too much attention to a project that's not making enough money for my family to survive, then maybe I need to delegate that or find a way to spend less time on it. And so it's all up to you when you're self-employed. And I find that suits me, but it might not suit everybody else. Okay, next question. Who were some of your earliest inspirations? For comic books, the very first comic books that got me super stoked were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. And eventually Creed did cross over with the Ninja Turtles, and I got to hang out with those guys at conventions and talk on the phone, and they were just such inspirations for me starting out as indie creators. And oh man, I just blasted back to the 90s watching those old Ninja Turtles movies, and the pure joy that I felt at the idea of what I was watching on the screen unfold was so exciting. And just the idea that it was made by this small group of people was so exciting to me. I was like, that's what I want to do. I didn't want anything else out of my life. I just wanted to be a creator. And then, of course, I was in high school during the Image era of comic books. So watching my heroes like Todd McFarlane and, Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, watching these guys, break away from the mold. And there were many others, Dale Keown, of course, Mark Silvestri and Eric Larson, watching these guys break out of that, corporate kind of role and just artists. You're just an artist. And I still deal with this all the time. You're just an artist. What do you know? And it's like they knew a lot, and they proved that they were the powerhouse that was bringing people to buy their books. If they got put on a Spider-Man book, that book would blow up. So they knew, hey, we're just going to go off and do our own indie thing, and we're going to take charge of our own destinies. And I'll always respect and love and admire that. And that's the kind of thing that I would want to pass on to other people. It's like, this is America. You get to own the things that you make. If you take that risk, and if you build up enough of an audience and you bring enough quality and if you consistently deliver that quality, you can build your own empire. You can build your own IP and be licensing it out for films and toys and stuff. And so what a dream come true. There's no greater job in the world. And those guys really led the path for a lot of us to do that. And a lot of my comic bros feel the same way, even though we may not agree with them on everything. Those guys were legends, and in the Hall of Heroes of comic book creators. It's an inside joke. Okay, so number 8, last question. What other resources or people would you suggest that someone starting out off in this career in comic books should tune into? I mean, obviously, there are a lot of comic book creators on YouTube now and on Twitch. I would recommend checking out my buddy Eric Canetti. He does a lot of live drawing on Twitch. I would recommend checking out Dan Fraga Boom. He does his own Indiegogo comic called Black Flag. Of course, my boy Ethan Van Sciver does his own comic. Cyberfrog is probably the biggest, most successful indie comic. Okay, I can't say that anymore because now Keanu Reeves. Look at Keanu Reeves. Just do what he does. Just do what Keanu does. Cyberpunk. Yeah, I love that guy. So yeah, there's a lot of resources for drawing comics. I think, who's the other guy? Skull Chasers. Jake Parker is a YouTuber and a very successful, I think he was the guy who kind of started the whole Inktober craze. And so anyway, he does a lot of YouTube videos about how to make comics as well. And I gotta talk about my buddy Jason Brubaker. He did a podcast about making comics, lots of interviews with comic book pros, really nice insight into the process of making books. And he does his own books as well. Like he's got a book called Sithra and Phobos. So check those out. He's got a YouTube channel over there as well. Pretty hype. But after all said and done, all you need is Creed, baby. That's right. Creed Reimaginary is coming to Indiegogo in January. That should be like right now. I made this video in advance to let you all know that my buddy Ethan Van Sciver is publishing Creed. We are bringing it back to the old Hall of Heroes days. Ethan Van Sciver, Matt Martin, and I, we all got our start doing indie comics together. As you know, Ethan's book Cyberfrog just cleared $1 million on his last campaign. So with all this money floating around in comics, I thought, well, it's only reasonable that Creed would make $1 million too, right? Okay, realistically, that's not going to happen. But what you can do is you can help me out a lot by checking out the Indiegogo campaign over there on, Indiegogo. It's the Creed campaign. I'll put a link in the description below. I'm going to be promoting the heck out of this. So if you're looking for comic book resources, man, you come to the right place. I'm recording an awful lot of tutorials on how to make comics. I'm going to have a lot of them here on my channel. And if you're like, well, man, I'd love to help you out, Trent, but like, what's Creed even about? Well, tell you what, I made myself a trailer for you. New from All Caps Comics. Wait, what? Creed Reimaginary. Desperate for material for his new comic and to escape the dread of high school life, 17-year-old comic book creator Mark Farley returns to the dream world once more, only to find that in his absence, a mysterious entity has plunged the world of dreams into despair and darkness. Bands of marauding Skeezix scour the land, enslaving its inhabitants and forcing them to dig for the Dreamstone, a relic which grants the ultimate power of creation and destruction. Creed Reimaginary, back it today only on Indiegogo.